Well, Supreme Court Justice nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson will be making the rounds on Capitol Hill this week as she begins preparing for her confirmation hearings.
Yeah, those hearings could take place by the end of March, but there's a lot that needs to be done between now and then. CUNY Constitutional Law Professor Natalie Gomez-Velez joins us live this morning to take us through the process step by step. Good morning, Natalie. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So let's go through this. So as the first black woman and the first public defender to be considered for the Supreme Court, what is Judge Jackson up against?
It's interesting, right? So this is her third Senate confirmation process, right? First the Sentencing Commission, then as a federal district court, then just last year she was confirmed to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and there she garnered actually 3 Republican votes in her favor. So where we are now is after President Biden nominated her, then it goes to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator Durbin has said he wants to move it quickly, mentioned in some reports getting it done by April 9th. And then the question is, what kind of opposition is she going to face in the Judiciary Committee, where she'll testify and then get questions? And then it goes to the full Senate for a vote. And that's we're at the place where we're seeing what will the vote counts be out of the committee and then at the full Senate.
Right, and that's pretty standard practice, right? That whole timeline you just kind of laid out right there. Any idea, though, for this week, those meetings, who Judge Jackson will be meeting with on Capitol Hill? Is it normal to meet with both Democrats and Republicans prior to this whole timeline that you just gave?
Yes, in fact, the Biden administration has indicated that they're trying to get bipartisan support for this nominee. And it's interesting, this is an important moment where there's a possibility to get more bipartisan support for a Supreme Court nominee than we've seen in a long time. And there's a couple of reasons that maybe, that it would be great to see that happen, right? She's not going to change the balance on the court. She's clearly highly qualified. She's drawn bipartisan support before, so one would hope that you don't get the Senate kind of scorched earth tactics that you've seen in Supreme Court confirmation processes before, but you don't know. You're hearing different reports from different senators, both on the Judiciary Committee and otherwise.
So I'm curious, though, she's going to undergo mock hearings. They're known as murder boards. That sounds terrifying to me. It's really intimidating. So who actually participates in those mock hearings? And what do they primarily focus on?
So they go through the process of, asking questions and answers that they anticipate that she will be asked during the Judiciary Committee hearings. And it's something that lawyers do a lot, right? You do you moot arguments, you do mock hearings, and it's really to test the nominee and sort of put her in the position of being prepared to answer some of the toughest questions that will be thrown at her.
Yeah, I mean, you prepare for the worst, you hope for the best, right? It's like, and you want to go in prepared each and every time. Judge Jackson, though, certainly, look at the resume, wide breadth of experience with the law. You know this, both professionally and personally. 2 of her uncles and her brother worked in law enforcement. One of her uncles was actually sentenced to life in prison on drug charges. Now, I covered Sonia Sotomayor's hearings. It was very interesting, very much similar. People look for those tiny details to latch onto. Do you think that those drug charges and arrests were actually going to come up during these hearings? She addressed it in her speech.
She did, right? So she kind of got out in front of that a little bit. And, it's one of those things. She addressed that she had family members who were entangled in the criminal justice system and family members who were police officers, police chiefs, et cetera. And I think that only adds to a sense of her qualification as a real person with, a real understanding of the impacts that the law has on the lives of real people, and that she sees it from the full, spectrum, right? She sees it from both sides. As you mentioned, she's has practiced criminal defense, which is sorely needed on the court, right? We haven't had since Thurgood Marshall someone who has experience in criminal defense, which is really important. A lot of the cases that come before the court, she has that experience with the sentencing guidelines, private practice. She has more judicial experience than a lot of the justices sitting on the court now, right? She's more like Sotomayor and having federal trial judge experience, and so it would be a cheap shot, I think, for senators to go after. I think there's a risk in going after her in those ways, but they may do it anyway.
Yeah, you never know, right? Well, even though Judge Jackson won't change the ideological makeup of the court, there's still a lot at stake, like you just mentioned. The Supreme Court will be ruling on several key issues, including affirmative action, voting, and abortion rights. So do you think the Republicans will really be drilling down on her during the confirmation hearings regarding those issues?
I think regarding those issues, it's going to be a little hard, right? Because there really isn't anything in her record that touches on those hot button issues that they can sort of point at. And again, she doesn't change the ideological balance such as that there is, although some say you shouldn't talk about it that way. But and so there's a risk in going after her in that way. And it's almost like it doesn't sound like there's a real appetite to do so. You know, you've heard, you know, some senators kind of who hadn't voted in favor of her saying they might this time. Others like Lindsey Graham seems to be going back and forth. But Murkowski hasn't committed, or Susan Collins hasn't committed. But it's Romney, though, seems to be going the other way.
Right.
I think that Republicans are really struggling to oppose this nominee.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's also historic. You know, you can't get in the. You know, you want to be the person that's in the way of history at the same time. And, you know, you talk about the ideological makeup of the court. You know, it's tough to say that it's not one way or the other when the court kind of shapes out a certain way.
But you know what? Wouldn't it be great if at this moment, because it's a historic nominee, because she is someone who is clearly highly qualified, that you get the kind of support. I mean, think about Justice Breyer back in 1994, unanimous support out of the Judiciary Committee, 87 votes out of 100, right? If you can get something like that, there would be some healing that could go on, some calming of the waters, and there's not a lot of risk for Republicans to do that, to really, I guess, get us kind of closer to a place where, you know, there's an understanding that someone who is highly qualified, well respected, has integrity, belongs on the Supreme Court. Let's just go ahead and confirm her.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Natalie Gomez-Velez, thank you again so much for walking us through the whole process this morning.
Thank you for having me.